Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel. We continue with Pirkei Torah Eliezer, chapter 27. Before we begin, I would like to dedicate this teaching Le'ilui Nishmat Emily, Louise Bat Emily, because she made you the man you are today, and she would be proud. Our father Abraham, shield of Abraham, man of war. Hallelu et Adonai kol goim, shabechuhu kol haumim, ki gavar alenu chasdo, ve'emet Adonai le'olam, hallelujah. It's important to note that these trials of Abraham that are being presented here are not necessarily in sequential order, but rather relevance and similarities. For instance, last week, the main topic was Sarah being taken from Abraham by Pharaoh, and the next example was Avimelech, despite them being about 20 years apart from each other, but similar things. So, okay, you get it. The sixth trial of Abraham was when all the kings, Amarpal and his friends, came against him to slay him. Who was Amarpal? Amarpal was Nimrod. As we discussed, the names given to these significant characters are based on their actions. Nimrod, we shall rebel. Anachnu Nimrod, we will rebel. He led mankind into a rebellion against the Creator. He was also the face of that generation. And what of the name Amarpal? Why is that what he's called right now? Amar, said, right? Vayomer, Amar, he said. Pal, fall, drop. Lehapil, he dropped in. In other words, he said to go drop or toss Abraham into the fire. Amarpal, that's what he was remembered for. You see, after Abraham walked away unscathed, that's the guy that said to drop that guy in the fire. Amarpal, and so was his name. Okay. They said, let us first begin with the son of his brother. Again, the four kings, including Nimrod, Amarpal, wanted to ultimately take out Abraham. That was their goal. So they know, okay, listen, this dude just walked into the fire. Let's see if the Creator is still on his side. They said, let us first begin with the son of his brother. That's Lot, right? And afterwards, let us begin with him. First, we'll see. We got to test the waters over here, right? On account of Lot, they took all of the wealth of Sodom and Gomorrah, as it is said, and they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah. Genesis 14:11. Did you understand what I just read right now? The entire purpose for starting that war was to remove Abraham from the equation. That's it. Period. Okay? They went to war with the five kings. They did all that war for one man, to take out that man. That's, by the way, that's how wars are fought. So the entire purpose was to take out Abraham. What would have happened if Abraham would, God forbid, not be in this world? There would be no world to begin with, right? Because there would be no redemption, no tshuva. And since we have learned that the world cannot stand without tshuva, to remove the one and only man who was doing a tikkun, a correction for the sins of Adam, thereby all mankind, would be to remove the only merit the world actually has. Take out Abraham, that's it. There's no more world, especially not before Isaac was born. What the four kings did, if you read the text, they only took the goods and food from Sodom and Gomorrah and its surrounding provinces. They took no one else. They did take the maidservants and the manservants, but still it's considered as property. They weren't considered the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah. So they took all the property, all the gold, silver, and all that stuff. Genesis 14:11 and 12, and they took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, and they departed. And they took Lot and his possessions, the son of Abram's brother, and they departed, and he was living in Sodom. In other words, this was their purpose. It's written right here, clean in the text. All the info we need is in the plain text to understand their intentions and deeds. And why did they say, first let's start with Lot, and then we can move on to Abraham? Well, we discussed, because they needed to test the situation, test the waters first. You can't just come after the guy who walked in the fire for 3 days, representing the God who destroyed the earth in the great flood for their wicked ways. Like, let's take it easy over here, right? But again, these forces of evil, they're not too smart. They're never going to quit. Eventually, it will cost them their lives, their souls, eternity. But they cannot stop because this is who they are based on the choices that they made. The God who confused the languages of the people and demolished the tower and their plans to fight God. They want to go after this guy. You do not just come after Abraham. But let's first start with his nephew, who looked very much like Abraham, and see if this God will smite us or even stop us, right? Lot looked a lot like Abraham. Lot looked like his father. His father was Abram's brother. Abram and his brother looked just like their father. That's how it was back in the day. Like we said, Isaac looked exactly like Abraham. So Lot looked very similar to Abraham. So they did it. There was no resistance. And this is for a reason, of course, that God didn't stop them, right? Nothing. Okay, we're doing it. We defeated the 5 kings. Give us all your gold, all your loot, right? All the goods and jewels and manservants and maidservants. And oh yeah, where's Lot and his family? Whoa, okay. Do we know now? Do we know by now why God does anything and everything in this world? For his namesake. That's why God does things and allows things to happen. And if we can't see it now, don't worry, we will. But that's what it's for, to glorify his name. That's our purpose for living. Do we know by now why Abraham did anything in his life? For God's namesake. The reason that God does things and the reason that Abraham does things are one and the same. Which is why Abraham was so blessed, because everything he did was in perfect alignment with his creator. Chassid, mamash. Now let's get back to the logic behind the reasons for this war. Now we know that this is nothing new, as just about every war fought throughout history, especially over the last 2,000 years, once you kind of could put 2 and 2 together, was never for the reason that they said, oh, we're going there because of communism. We're going there to stop the axis of evil. It's never like that. Even, again, you could find all this information online. They're currently making documentaries about these things, but it gets way, way deeper than that. And if I started this, then this channel would be a whole nother thing, right? All about the conspiracies and everything, not theory, fact, conspiracies, fact, documentation. You just need to know where to look and who to talk to. But that's not what this channel is about. Just understand this. Nothing is what it seems. Every war is planned. It is planned. It doesn't just break out. And it's never just about defeating the other side. There's always an agenda. Again, when countries go to war, everyone loses, except for who doesn't, who profits from war. So, for example, World War II, everybody thinks that Hitler was the grand architect of the whole thing. He wasn't just another puppet with a personal agenda. He had an agenda of his own, not removing anything that's coming to Hitler, okay? You'll know where I come from. When the Germans knew that they had officially lost the war, in other words, that's it, we're overrun, war's over, Germany had lost. That's when all the officers and the guards at the death camps, they were ready to just leave the Jews and flee. But if you're actually going to understand what happened, historically speaking, that's when they started ramping up all the killings of the Jews. So instead of just putting them in the gas chambers and then taking the bodies and burying them or throwing them in the ovens, they put people in the gas chambers and started burning them alive to kill as many Jews as possible after the fact that they lost. You understand? Hitler told them to stay and finish the job. He said this war was not about defeating the Allies, but removing the Jews from the equation. We're going to go to war with the world, but just to remove Abraham from the equation. You see, the whole thing, as far as he was concerned, was to take out the seed of Israel from the world. One and the same. He didn't want to destroy any of the countries he invaded, right? He wanted them whole. He wanted his version of the one world order. He didn't want to bomb the UK. Hitler actually had an affinity for England. He wanted to make peace with Churchill. He loved the British culture and everything. And there were many behind the scenes workings over there. It wasn't about that for Hitler. It was strictly about killing the Jews, all of them. Again, We don't care what you identify as 3 generations back. If your grandmother was a Jew and you're currently walking around with the crucifix around your neck, you go into the gas chambers. You understand? So all this stuff is not only documented, but there are still living witnesses to these events. That's what this is. So what I'm saying is, whatever wars are happening right now, seemingly in the world, none of these things are accidents. These things are very much planned. Everything that you see on TV in the world is absolutely planned. Okay. We won't talk about it here, but just please know these things, for goodness sakes. And what is the end of every civilization, organization, country, army, people, or what have you that mobilize towards world domination, i.e. a one world order? What do they want? They want independence from God. That's what they want, okay? Removing the Jews is just a means to an end. And so the best way to get attention is to go after the boss's loved ones, if you will, the Jews. In this case, they went after Abraham's loved ones, Lot and his family, only, of course, to get then to Abraham, and we just went through the potential chain of events. Okay, so they invaded Sodom and Gomorrah, and they took all the possessions, which include the servants and slaves, and from the inhabitants, meaning none of the inhabitants. They only took Lot and his family from the inhabitants to get to Abraham, because they know that now this is how we draw him out. They were almost expecting him to come. You recall how we discussed that the Palit, the refugee, was Og, aka Eliezer, who came and told this to Abraham. Vayavo hapalit vayaged laAvraham. Here we have another version. And yes, I am aware that it says it in the same book, in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Michael, the archangel, came and told Abraham, as it is said in Genesis 14:13, and the fugitive came and told Abram, the Hebrew, and he was living in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol and the brother of Aner, who were Abram's confederates. They were Baalei Brit Avraham. Baal Brit, what is Brit? Covenant. In other words, they were in peace with him, but also they were his students, right? Vayavo hapalit vayaged laAvraham. So here, Rabbi Eliezer is saying that the Palit is actually Michael, the archangel. Vayaged comes from the word lehagid, right? You can also see the word Magid throughout many rabbinic texts. What is a Magid? A Magid, what is a Magid? This is an angel who informs the tzaddik of information. He tells, Magid, lehagid, to tell. The Ramchal, for instance, in addition to Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, revealing information, the Ramchal had a Magid. The Ramchal was able to elevate himself and do many, many different things to a specific level that he was able to have a Magid that would explain these hidden words of Torah. This way, the Ramchal was be able to unlock what the Ari was able to unlock 500 years ago, 250 years before his time, going back to 2,000 years our time, 1,500 years before the Ari, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai from the Zohar. You understand? That's the chain. The Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, 2,000 years ago. 1,500 years later, you have the Ari in Sfat dealing with the Zohar, unlocking things from within the Zohar. And then 250 years later, the Ramchal is basically picking up the chain of where the Ari left off, and he was getting into the depths of what he was saying. So, very, very cool. Mind you, the Ramchal knew all the workings of the Ari by heart, it says, by the time he was either 12 or 14 years old. Which, I'm looking at my shelf right now, that makes him next level, I don't even know what. But he was definitely up there. So he had a Magid, right? Michael is the minister, prince of the world, it says. He was the one who told, Lahagid, Magid, as it is said in Ecclesiastes 10:20. The winged creature will tell the matter. Uba'al haknafaim yagid davar. More specifically, the one with the wings will tell a matter. Yagid davar. Even in your thought you shall not curse a king, nor in your bedrooms shall you curse a wealthy man, for the bird of the heaven shall carry the voice, and the winged creature will tell the matter. Ubal hakenafaim yagid davar. Who has wings? It ain't a little birdie told me. Okay? So this is the one with the wings will tell the matter. The archangel Michael is said to be able to fly around the world with the single stroke of his wings. And he's there. Now you might question and say, but I thought that Metatron was the highest of all the angels. And this is true. But in a lower realm than Michael. He's the highest in whatever realm he is. Man, there's an earthly realm, a heavenly realm, and then there's a spiritual realm. Okay? So Michael is also one of the highest angels and one of the first angels to have ever been created, as is said in Daniel 10:13. And behold, Michael, one of the first princes, right? When the angel or the man Gabriel comes to Daniel, says, and the prince of the kingdom of Persia has been standing against me for 21 days. This is why he couldn't get 21 days. And behold, Michael, one of the first princes, in other words, the mighty Michael, right? Michael, Michael, I see you, buddy. One of the first princes has come to help, and I remain there beside the kings of Persia. Okay, so he is the winged one, the one with the wings. He's also the spiritual high priest of Israel as he resides on the right side, right? On the right side, you have Michael. On the left side, you have Gabriel. Michael is Chesed, Gabriel is Gvura. So what is on the side of Chesed? The priesthood. That is on the right. Aaron is below Avraham on the right. And above them, above Chesed, you have Michael, the spiritual priest, the high priest of Israel, on the side of Chesed. Now let's see why Michael is called a palit. Why is he called a palit? The one who escaped, right? Why is his name called palit, the one who escaped? One of the reasons that the Radal gives is that he's going to lehaflit ulehatzil plitat Beit Yehuda. He is going to extract and save the exiles of the house of Judah. Where's Judah? Also, the lion, also on the right, you see. So Michael is now looking out for the house of Judah. If you read Psalms, I forgot what it is. It's, Shir HaMa'alot B'shuv Adonai et shivatzinu aynu kecholmim az yimales chok pinu l'shonenu rina. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I'm thinking about by the rivers of Babylon, right? And where we sat down and there we wept when we remembered Zion, right? Who? What? David wrote this, but there was no exile yet. Who is this? This is the angels are sitting down, specifically Michael, and weeping with Israel, the house of Judah specifically that was taken to Babylon. So what is that? Psalms 127, I think. Anyway, it's in it's up there. No, it's not. Excuse me. 37? We'll go with 37. Forgive me if not, but you know which one. Okay, anyway, our text says, because in the hour when the Holy One, blessed be He, caused He caused Satan and his entourage to descend from heaven. Remember, we learned this in the beginning. To descend from heaven from their holy place, he caught, the Samach Mem, Satan caught a hold of the wings of Michael to make him fall with him, right? And the Holy One, blessed be He, saved him from his power. In other words, he loosened Satan's grip on Michael's wings. Therefore, he is called the one who has escaped, the Palit. That's why Michael is referred to the Palit. So that's the first point. And the second one, concerning him, Ezekiel said in Ezekiel 33, 21 to 22, now it came to pass in the 12th year, in the 10th month, on the 5th day of the month of our exile in Babylon, that the fugitive from Jerusalem came to me saying, the city was struck, Hapalit miYerushalayim, Ba'alai Hapalit miYerushalayim, Le'emor, Hukta ha'ir, Jerusalem has been struck. And then they sat and wept when they remembered Zion. Now the hand of the Lord had been upon me in the evening before the coming of the fugitive, the Palit, and he opened my mouth before his coming to me in the morning, and my mouth was open, and I was no longer mute. Right? V'yad Hashem hayta elai ba'erev lifnei bo hapalit va'yiftach et pi ad bo elai baboker va'yiftach pi ve'lo ne'elamti od. Okay, so the reason for the ha, right? This is ha palit, not palit. which is is because it is referring to the first fugitive from creation. The first one who slipped through, got away, managed to get away, that was Michael. Later on, we will see Og, but in this case, it's Michael the archangel. So, Lot has been taken, and this is told to our father Abraham, the man who loves all life, who prays and intercedes for the wicked, who opens his tent for all and teaches them about God's love for humanity, who feeds the hungry, waters the thirsty, clothes the naked, and gives a home to the homeless. Abraham, the one who loves God. Abraham the merciful. Abraham the kind. Abraham, the man of war. Oh, yes. Without hesitation and without anger. Abraham took his 3 students and Eliezer his servant with him, and he chased them. You see, when you do the right thing, there's only zeal in it. There's no anger. I mean, there's righteous anger, yes, but he also understood. See, this is considered one of the nisyonot. God is testing Abraham. All this happened for God to test Abraham. You think Abraham didn't know he was being tested? Of course he knew he was being tested. So that's why he ran to do it. Also for the fact to now protect his nephew. So who are the 3 students? Like we said, it says it right in Genesis 14:24, exclusive of what the lads ate and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, they shall take their share. Okay, now he chased them until Dan, which is Pamias. This is very, very interesting. This is fascinating, actually. You want to see old idolatry? Here it is, which is Pamias. Pamias. As said in Genesis 14:14, and Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, and he armed his trained men, those born in his house, 318, and he pursued them until Dan. Okay. Now, and it says, and he chased them until Dan, which is Pamias. He stopped in this specific place called Pamias. What is this place called Pamias? Our sages changed its original name. The original name of the place was called Paneas, right? From the god Pan. Pan, the Greek god, Paneas. That was the original name. Our sages called it now Pameas, right? So that's the one with the horns, the torso of a man, and the legs of a sheep or a goat. The best depiction in movies would be, forget about Pan's Labyrinth. What is it called? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The guy that James McAvoy plays, Mr. I forgot what his name. When the girl goes through the thing, and the first thing that she sees is a little dude out in the snow without a shirt and a scarf and little horns and goat's legs. That's Pan. Or that's what Pan looks like, supposedly. Now, if you're going to Google Pan, you'll see statues of Pan and what Pan is doing to other animals, for goodness sakes. Anyway, in Greek mythology, he is the god of the wild, shepherds and flocks, rustic music, and what do you call it? It's called impromptus. That's the harmonica-looking flute, with like the big one and the smaller one. That thing, that's what he plays, and he's also a companion to the nymphs. And why did our sages change the name from Paneas to Pameas? Because they called him Pi Mius. In other words, shut your mouth. Pi, mouth, Mius, like Nimaskva, I've had enough of you. Shut your mouth. And so he did. And they gave no further explanation on the matter because they don't need to do that. So in other words, we see the god Pan being worshipped already going back a little bit under 4,000 years ago. So just know this, our sages could remove the power of all these gods from them if they messed with them. The only beings who are untouchable until the end are Satan and his wife, Adam's first wife, she who shall not be named. So Abraham stopped in Pameas, a place where the Canaanites worshipped Pan. And there the righteous man, Abraham, was hindered. For there it was told to him, Abraham, know that in the future your children's children will serve idols in this place, as it is said in 1 Kings 12:29. And he placed one in Beit El, and the other he placed in Dan. Who is he talking about? I'm smiling because we learned about this specific verse back in the Red series, right? Calling all sparks. In the teaching specifically called The Secret of Mashiach ben Yosef. You'll see that we are talking about Yerovam. The king took counsel and made 2 golden calves. And he said to them, saying, it is far for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel. They have brought you up from the land of Egypt. And he placed one in Bethel and the other he placed in Dan. And this thing became a sin, and the people went before the one even until Dan. Indeed, the descendants of Abraham worshipped idols in this specific place. They're places around the world, right? They're unholy places. Just like we have holy places, there are also unholy places. These are places that have immense power. For instance, where the Egyptians placed Baal Peor, right? Where Israel came out and they camped before they crossed the sea, Baal Peor was right over there. That's why the Egyptians like, oh, they're right before Baal Peor. Baal Peor's got them, and Israel were afraid. We're right in front of Baal Peor. God's like, watch this, hold my beer, right? Okay, so that's that. But also, let's say the Sitra Achra, the Klipot, love to place their altars on our holy places to draw from its energy and pollute it. That's why if there's any type of semblance of a holy place here in Israel, boom, you're going to see a church go right up on there. See Temple Mount. First it was churches. Then the Mamluks came and then they turned it into a mosque. But that's what it is. These are the klipot. Without the original Kedusha, they have nothing. Their only source of power is whatever power they leech. And they are going to be removed one at a time. You see, watch. So in any case, there was a heaviness in that place as it had a whole lot of bad energy, right? And at this point, because they were there, Abraham received a prophecy that his descendants would go into idolatry in this very place. You got it, right? So in Job 17:9, it was written over there of Abraham, where it says, yet the righteous holds on his way, right? Vaye'achez le'echoz, right? What we learned last week, achuzah is an estate, but le'echoz is to hold on to. And the one whose hands are clean grows stronger and stronger. In most places, for most people, this would have weakened them when they would see what would become of them later on, right? Of their descendants later on. Vayachez tzadik dalko, but a righteous man will hold onto his way, hold on to the Torah, hold on, stay the course. And the one whose hands are clean, which was Abraham, grows stronger and stronger. This is a perfect description of Abraham, as he was uncompromising and unwavering from the truth and always did the right thing, no matter the cost. No matter the cost. That's what this is. That's what separates Abraham from everyone else, especially today. Today, we count the cost. Sometimes the cost of the right thing could be too high, right? Right is right and wrong is wrong. That's what this is. There's no other choice. It's always making the literal right decision, the right call. As difficult as it is, and it most of the time is. And it was only because his hands were clean that he was able to gain strength and push forward. And so not everyone was able to go with Abraham, right? And there he left his 3 students. So we can see this in 14:15, Genesis 14:15, and he divided himself against them at night. Impossible to translate this into English, so we're going to go through this so many different times, okay? Vayechalek aleihem laila. Vayechalek, lechalek, to divide, aleihem, upon them, laila, night. Hu ve'avadav vayakem, he and his servants, and smote them. Vayerdafem ad chova, and he pursued them until chova. Asher mismol leDamesek, which is to the left of Damascus. This does not mean that he went to necessarily the left of Damascus, but rather he went to the left. What is on the left? It is judgment. In other words, Abraham exacted judgment on them. All these little hints you got to pick up on. Abraham realized that not everyone is able to make this journey. Still, they were in a place of incredible impurity, and it weighed down on them, right? When Israel went to war in the wilderness, before they went to war, the priest would say, if there's anyone that if you are afraid, get out the line. In other words, you're not going to war. There's no shame in that, because if you are afraid, that means your hands are not clean. You think that great mighty men of war went out to war in the wilderness when Israel destroyed every nation in their path? No. They were rabbis with long beards, not big muscles. They were Talmidei Chachamim, and they were the most lethal dudes on the planet. Okay? Because of that. If you made this the slightest little mess up, you should not be on that line going to war. There's what do you call that? I forgot who already, but they've used this example. If you speak between putting on the tefillin of the hand and the tefillin of the head, you put this on first on the arm. You say the bracha. You wrap it around until your hand. You don't say anything. Then you put it on your head, and then you make the bracha. If you say a word between this and this, that's not a good thing. In other words, if you were not perfect, if they did that, I can't go to war. I said this. Okay, get out. No problem. But you can't go to war. But because they were righteous and they went to war, what happened? Not a single one of them died, right? So you have tens of thousands of Israelites against hundreds of thousands of whoever enemies stood against them, and not a single one of Israel died. Why? Clean hands. Like Abraham, like Moses. Neki chapayim uva levav asher lo nasa lashav nafshi v'lo nishba lemirma. Mi ale behar Adonai. Who will ascend the mountain of God? Moses, Abraham. You see, okay, you get this, right? So this is what happened. So because they were not on that level, he let them go. His three compadres over there. So not everyone came over there, but who did he take? First of all, why did he do this? To go battle the four kings. Why did he split his camp? The Hebrew says, tashash kocho. He became tired and weary. In other words, it knocked him a little bit over there. But not on his account, though. It was the men that he was traveling with. In other words, why am I feeling weak right now? He had to check himself. No, I'm good. Oh, I see. I'm carrying dead weight, if you will. So not on his account. It was on the people that were traveling with him. His three students were Canaanites after all. They were accursed, right? They were damned, if you will. And they feared, because of their sins, that they would not come out of the battle alive. If you have fear, that means you have reason to fear. Sin is fear. They are one and the same. Which is why Abraham had to do a quick field assessment and form a new battle plan. You guys stay here and watch over the loot that we recovered, because they recovered the loot. Now he's like, I'm going from my brother's son, my nephew. I'm going from my nephew Lot, and who took him. So you guys, it's okay. You guard this stuff, no problem. So he says, you guard the stuff while me and the big guy, we're going to go kick some doors. So he left them and their people with them, and he took Eliezer, his servant, with him. So it says 318 men, right? The numerical value, we know this, the numerical value of his name of Eliezer is 318, and he left his students who were the members of his house, and he chased them until the left of Damascus, as written, and he split the night. Another very interesting thing the Radal brings forth here. The only way Abraham would have caught up with them, because they were far ahead, it had to be told to him, right? The only way that Abraham could have caught up with them was through kfitzat haderech, the skipping of the way, right? In chapter 16 of our current series, if you missed that and you're watching this right now, first of all, why'd you miss it? Every one of these teachings is built on the last one. You need to watch the whole thing. But if you didn't pay attention, go to chapter 16, titled Three by Which the World Stand, and we discuss this in length, specifically about Eliezer and his skipping of the way from Hebron to Padan Aram. Okay? He had a 17-day journey in 6 hours, and also on the way back. So Eliezer in the future would experience kfitzat haderech. Abraham knew that his students were not worthy of such a miracle, which is why he left them behind. But he took Eliezer with him because he knew that he would have to go through this later on. In other words, if he's not worthy now, he will be worthy, but I need him now to do this so he could later on do that. So not by his own merit, as we discussed in that chapter, did Eliezer get to go back and forth like that, but because he was on a mission from Abraham. So the two of them went. And as we just read, and the night split before them, Vayechalek alehem alayla. Samuel the younger said, there the night was divided for him. So we see that there's a double meaning over here in the Hebrew. One, at night, he divided the camps, right? It was nighttime, so he divided the camps. Two, the night itself was divided, meaning it was around midnight. This is the plain understanding of nechlak lo halayla. The night was split for him. But if we only read and get into the Hebrew, and we will, I'll make it easy for you, okay? So I'll put an emphasis on what you need to pick up here. I'm going to read the Hebrew now. I just read the English before I read the Hebrew. Nechleka halayla sheyatzu mimitzrayim hu halayla sheheka hakadosh baruch hu et bechorei mitzrayim hu halayla sheheka Avraham et hamalachim את המלאכים, ואת מחניהם עמם, שנאמר, ויחלק עליהם לילה. What is the night? If there would be one date that you could choose to be the most significant in the history of our people, beginning already several times with Abraham, what else would it be if not Passover Eve, correct? This is the night which we are speaking of. This was the night of the covenant of the pieces, which we are going to learn, God willing, next week. Or in 2 weeks. I forget. Anyway, we will learn about this. This was the night that the angels came to Abraham and God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. They came lechomayom in the middle of the day, noon. They sat with him. Le'et erev they went, and that night, boom, that was Leil Pesach. Sarah was making matzot. Lot was making matzot. That was the night that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. And this is the very night where Abraham is about to lay the smackdown on the 4 kings. Exodus 12, 29, 30. Vayahi bachatzi halayla. It came to pass, it says at midnight, bechatzi chetzi, split, nechlak chetzi. It came to pass halfway through the night, and the Lord smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive, who is in the dungeon, and every firstborn animal. And Pharaoh rose at night, vayakam paro laila, hu v'chol avadav, he and all his servants and all of Egypt. And there was a great outcry in Egypt, for there was no house in which no one was dead. I learned something new this time going through this. So we know that the smiting of the firstborn, what if the house didn't have a firstborn in it, right? Let's say the eldest brother was living elsewhere and the father himself was not firstborn, so where's the firstborn male? Or they had a firstborn female, right? The head of the household got it. And it said that the Egyptian women, every Egyptian woman had at least 5 firstborns from 5 different dudes. That's right. It said that all of Egypt was whoring around. So every household had at least 5 different firstborns from 5 different dudes. So we're not just talking about 1 or 2 dying in a household. We're talking about significant numbers here. So great outcry indeed. This is the night that so much power comes into the world, that night of Leila Seder. So much power comes in the world, and that is why we maximize its potential through the Seder, the order that God gave us. God gave us an order to do the Seder, right? Forever. As written just a few verses before, Pharaoh and Egypt gets hit. and you shall keep this matter as a statute for you and for your children forever. Lechok. What is a chok? What's the difference between chok and mitzvah? Chok, you don't understand the exact reasoning why. You will understand this once everything is revealed. But right now, you're going to do it, right? What the red heifer is also a chok. We don't understand. Yes, we know what it does. Why, where is it connected? We don't know. We will. That is a chok, a chukah. So the Leil Seder is a chok. Lecha ulevanecha ad olam. A statute for you and for your children forever. And it shall come to pass when you enter the land that the Lord will give you, as he spoke, that you shall observe this service, Passover Eve. And it will come to pass if your children say to you, what is the ma'avodah lachem? What is the service to you? You're going to tell them, it's because everything we've been through. Now you get to tell your kids, not what happened this night. Yes, God took Israel out of Egypt and all these incredible things. What else happened this night? The covenant of the pieces, the angels informing Abraham and Sarah, and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham smote the kings in that night. Whoa, a whole bunch of things went down on that night. Good stuff, and they're all related, as you can see. On this night, we harness the power that God has bestowed upon Israel while smiting its enemies, simultaneously elevating Israel, squashing the enemy. Now, look what our text says. There, the night was divided for him. That is the night was from before. Hi halayla shaita mikodem. That was the night that was mikodem. What is mikodem? Kodem comes from the word kedem, as in, you guessed it, the days of old, the days of yore, whatever your translation says. While the world was being formed and everything was being laid down perfectly by God, the night of freedom, Passover Eve. That is that night. This is the night in which he smote the firstborn of Egypt. This is the night that Abraham smote the kings. And if you don't know this, there is yet another significant event that took place on that fateful night. The book of Esther, 6:1. Now you know another one. Balayla hahu nadeda shnat hamelech. On that night, the king's sleep was disturbed, and he ordered to bring the book of the records, the chronicles, and they were read before the king. What is that night? Y'all know now what night that night is. As we have learned, whenever it says in the book of Esther, the king, when it just says the king without an Achashverosh, the king or the king Achashverosh, it refers to the king. Okay? And it was on the night of Passover that these things came to pass. Furthermore, up until midnight, the time of judgment is in the world, which is why he paused right over there. But there are so many places in the entire Torah about the night and midnight, which also at the time, that was when David rose to praise God. B'chatzi alayla, every night David had the harp over his bed, and he didn't want, what our sages did, I'm reading all these things, how could they learn Torah all night and then just go into Shacharit and continue their day? This doesn't make sense. So where do they sleep? The thing is, after the sun sets, they daven Mariv, they daven Aravit, which normal times today, now that they put the clock back to how it's supposed to be, it gets dark here around, what was it last week? 4:37, 38, right? So officially stars come out at like 5:15. Now it's going to change. But basically by 6 p.m., these guys are sound asleep. They wake up at midnight, depending, it's sometime between 11:30 and 12:30. So let's say they go to sleep at 6, they wake up at midnight, they wake up at 12:30. That's it. That is Chatzi Alayla. The time of judgment is passed from 6 to midnight. And now all of a sudden, they're going into the time capsule of Uriel. Different thing. The 4 angels, they have 4 times a day. It's divided. So anyway, they learn all night until dawn. Those are the times. This is how they did it. So David, same thing. He would wake up, he had the harp over his bed, and exactly B'chatzi alayla, whenever it was, a gust of wind would come and strum the strings of the harp, and David would wake up to the sound of the wind, the ruach, strumming his harp, And that is where he went and praised God and wrote Tehillim and learned Torah. That's what he did his entire life. I mean, the moment he came to this realization, obviously. And David never had a deep sleep again, which means he never tasted death. David was perfectly metukan by the time that he died. Okay, so like we said, the midnight today would be anytime between 11:30 or 12:30, sometimes 12:40 a.m. Just like, the planets and the stars shift, the sun and everything. So that's why it constantly moves. So if you want to do things related to that night, you should probably figure out when those times are. But this is the most significant night of our people, from Abraham to Moses, to Hezekiah to Daniel, to Mordechai to Esther. Everything happened on that night. And it will also be for the days of Mashiach. As we know, Ben Nisan niga'alu, in the month of Nisan they were redeemed. U Ben Nisan atidin liga'el, and in Nisan, in the future, we will also be redeemed, right? Moses came, it was exactly, the timeline was perfect over there. He came and he was hidden. That's what it says in the books. Mashiach will come. Moses was the Redeemer. He was the Savior, right? Mashiach is going to come. Then he is going to be hidden for 3 months. Then he's going to come back again. And then you have the 6 months of the Makot. And that goes from Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar, Nisan, in the 7th month of Nisan. They stopped working in Tishrei, 7th month, on the 7th month, boom. Well, 7 to 1. 6 months later, and that is what will happen also in the future. Those are our timelines. When exactly, no one knows, but Acharit Kereshit. If you want, you can check out that series. Okay. Of this it is said in Exodus 12:29, Vayhi bechatzi halayla, and it came to pass at midnight, or halfway through the night split. In the first half, the firstborn from Egypt were smitten, and in the second half, the kings were smitten. God split the night for Abraham. Pause here, because the first half of this night, no smiting of the kings is going to take place. That's the second half. God's going to take care of the firstborn of Egypt. What are you talking about? You worried about time here when we're talking about outside of space and time? Don't worry about it. Hillel the elder said, Abraham took all the wealth of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he returned in peace, and not one was missing, as it is said, and he brought back all the goods. All means all, Genesis 14:6. Now this is referring to all the wealth of Sodom and Gomorrah, which was in the back of the line, because Abraham couldn't care less about material things. Whatever. That's why it says not one was missing, meaning not a single thing that was stolen. The way they might write it is like, not a single person was missing. We know not a single person was missing. Look who went to war with them, right? Is Abraham and Eliezer. But it said not one was missing, not a penny, nothing, not a drop of anything. Nothing was missing. Not a single thing that was stolen, which was not returned, including, of course, the servants and the slaves. And Abraham feared and said, is it possible from all this population that I killed, that there was no righteous man among them? How could this be? Again, the guy went and slaughtered these 4 kings because he knew that this had to happen. This was also the dream, in the book of Jasher, right, where you see the star that was Abraham, that was above where Abraham was born, right, which What's Their Faces took basically that story and made it their own in a different version, cheap knockoff. That star swallowed up the 4 stars, and this is the dream. This is what they told Nimrod, which he says, okay, you got to kill him. Taking out the 4 kings, 4 kingdoms. Wait till you see what's coming in the upcoming weeks. This is also related to this directly. Here it's happening. And Abraham feared, and he said, wait a minute, maybe from all these people that I just killed, not a single righteous man? Abraham the kind, Abraham the merciful, Abraham the giving, Abraham the man of war. Which is where the Holy One, blessed be He, answered him, saying in 15:1, fear not, Abram. Fear not. Do not be afraid, my friend. I got you. You did right. You were tested and you passed. But we're not done with this verse just yet, as we will circle back in just a bit and speak of it in future classes as well. Of this it is said in Isaiah 41:3, Ildafem ya'avor shalom, orach beraglav lo yavo. He pursued them and passed on safely. This is of Abraham, on a path upon which he had not come with his feet. What? And no filth had come upon your feet in this matter. it says. What does this mean? First of all, you have kfitzat haderech. That's one. In other words, there's no on a path upon which had not come with his feet. He didn't even walk this path. Kfitzat haderech, that's one. But the second one is, and no filth had come upon your feet in this matter. So if you want to take it practically, let's look at this. First of all, let's read 2 verses back in Isaiah 41, 1-3, okay, before we just read 3 right now. So we're just going to read 1 and 2. So you can see that this is indeed speaking of Abraham. Remember, prophecies that have been fulfilled will be fulfilled again, as everything is cyclical. Solomon said it, Ein chadash tachat hashemesh. Mashayahu ze sheyeh. What was is what will be. 1. Be silent to me, you islands, and kingdoms shall renew their strength. They shall approach, then they shall speak together to judgment. Let us draw near. You islands, in the future, who have been formed by kingdoms of the past, coming together for one reason alone, and that is to defy God by coming after his people, right? Verse 2, who aroused from the east? Who aroused from the east? Mi he'ir mimizrach. The one whom righteousness accompanied. He placed nations before him, and over kings he gave him dominion. He made his sword like dust, his bow like wind, blown stubble. Mi he'ir mimizrach, tzedek ikraehu. He's called tzedek. Ikreu leraglo. Iten lefanav goyim umelachim. Yared iten ka'afar charbo kekash nidaf kashto. Who aroused from the east? The one whom righteousness accompanied. Where is the east? That's Babylon. Who rose up from the east? That would be Abraham. The first public display to have all the kings bow down to him was in the east by the fiery furnace. Remember that? And the second was when he smote whoever remained. He made his sword like dust. Listen now. He made his sword like dust, his bow like wind-blown stubble. The Midrash says that Abraham would throw sand on his enemies, on these 4 kings. How could 2 dudes take out hundreds of thousands of armed men? How? Impossible. Depends who you are, right? Abraham would pick up sand and he would throw them, and every single grain would turn into either a spear or an arrow, and everyone hit its mark. That's 10. I Googled how many grains of sand roughly in a handful. 10,000 grains of sand per handful. That translates to 10,000 spears or arrows being flung every second. In a mud fight, and that's it. Each one hitting its own target. So that's 10,000 dudes dead every second, maybe even more. I'm sure those spears went through 2 and 3. Like we read the wars of the sons of Jacob from the book of Jasher last like a year or 2 ago. It said Jacob was on horseback. He was elderly while his sons were fighting with their bare hands. Jacob had a bow. Like he said, Joseph, I was fighting in them with my bow and with my sword. He was shooting arrows like Legolas from Lord of the Rings. Every arrow, it said, would kill 3 people. Some arrows said it would kill 7. Some said it would kill 10. Crazy stuff. So that was him. He was just going. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. He pursued them and passed on safely in a path upon which his feet had not come. Easy peasy Japanese. If any of us had those abilities, we would be patting ourselves on the back, no doubt, but not Abraham's like, yeah, I just did that. No. Who worked? Verse 4. Who worked and did, who calls the generations from the beginning. Who did this? I, the Lord, am the first, and with the last ones I am he. Ani hu. Mi pa'al v'asa. Yeah. And Abraham knew this. Of course he knew this. And with this mindset, that's why we read, as no filth had come upon your feet in this matter. What is filth on the feet? Why does the Torah give us so many borders and boundaries? Why? Not only what to do, but also what not to do, but also how to do it and when to do it. And the same goes with the people who are called to spend who are called to spend our time with, that we are called to spend our time with. Our sages are very clear on that. You don't hang out with idolaters. You don't hang out too long with certain type of people. You stay away from this kind of person, that kind of person. You shouldn't speak too much. The more you speak, the more chances you are of digging yourself a hole, and you're going to fall into it. And the same goes with peoples that we're called to hang out or not hang out with, but also when one goes to war, right? There's milchama. When Israel goes to war against Amalek, for instance, after slaughtering them, the victory is not over yet. How so? Because Israel still has to return and purify themselves, as they just have all this unholy blood on them. I've used that for the thing. If you wrestle, you can't wrestle with the pig and expect to not get mud on you, right? You're still gonna get that, right? So this is what happened. If you slaughter the unholy, you're gonna get unholy blood on you. You still have to go home, and you still have to go into the mikveh. You still have to purify yourself. This has strong spiritual properties, as we know, because the nefesh is in the blood, right? So while your average Joe with supernatural abilities, let's say, would have slain the 4 kings and taken back what they stole, average Joe would easily get a huge ego and take for himself what was taken, thereby taking some of the blood, if you will, the characteristic traits of that which he just slaughtered, but not Abraham. As the filth in which he had just rid the world from did not stick with him, because he knew that it all came from God. You see, he made that separation. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha said, Abraham was the first to give a tithe in the world, as he took a tithe from all the bounty of Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as from Lot his brother's son, and gave it to Shem, the son of Noah. As it says in Genesis 14:20, and he gave him a tithe from all, meaning from all. Now, in the book of Jasher, it says, and Adoni Tzedek, king of Jerusalem, which is Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem, they're one and the same. Who is Shem? That's what it says in the book of Jasher. I know the Christians love to believe that it was Jebus, but sorry, not everybody is Jebus, and even Jebus isn't even Jebus, but whatever. And Adoni Tzedek, king of Jerusalem, who is Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Melech, the valley of kings. And in Jasher it says, Adoni Tzedek, my Lord is righteousness, as opposed to how it's written in the Torah, Malki Tzedek, my king is righteousness. For all intents and purposes, this, of course, is the same person who carries this title. It is a title. That being Shem, son of Noah, right? Shem, Ham, and Japheth were the oldest people in the world at the time. They all lived till 600 years old. So they were pre-flood dudes. They held weight. And another thing of the kings that Abraham slew, one of the kings that Abraham slew was actually the son of Shem, which is also why he came out to meet him. In other words, I see what you did there, right? Shem gave Abraham, he said, okay, you killed my son, but my son was a wicked king. He gave him the nod and said, yeah, it was a righteous kill. Shem, the son of Noah, came forth to meet him, and when he saw all the deeds which he had done, and all the wealth which he had brought back, he wondered in his heart. He marveled in his heart. What did he wonder? The incredible feat that Abraham just did. Now, obviously, it was God who endowed Abraham with the power and favor. Nevertheless, it was only because Abraham was who he was that all that power was actually given to him. Abraham earned this, and then he just gave it away because he's like, I'm just the conduit, man. Now, this next part is so reminiscent of Jethro approaching Moses. Look what our text in PDE says. Shem, the son of Noah, came forth to meet him, and when he saw the deeds that he had done and all the wealth that he had brought back, he wondered in his heart. He was, wow, this is amazing. Could also be all the things that God did, right, through Abraham. He began to praise, to glorify, and to laud the name of the Most High, saying, and blessed be God, the Most High, who hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand. Compared to Exodus 18, 8-10. Moses told his father-in-law about all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians on account of Israel. and about all the hardships that had befallen them on the way, and that the Lord had saved them. Jethro was happy about all the good that the Lord had done for Israel, that he had rescued them from the hands of the Egyptians. Thereupon Jethro said, "Blessed is the Lord, who has rescued you from the hands of the Egyptians and from the hands of Pharaoh, who has rescued the people from beneath the hand of the Egyptians." Right? Shem lost his son. Jethro lost his people. Remember, Jethro was living as an Egyptian. He was one of Pharaoh's advisors, and it said they were his people until they banished him, and the only reason they banished him was because he didn't want to go along with the plan of drowning all the male children of Israel, and that's why he said, "Get out of Dodge, man." Bilam was the one that came up with that idea. So he was sad to hear that all the people that he knew were dead, but he understood it was a righteous kill. They had it coming. So Jethro came to Moses, Shem came to Abraham, Jethro blessed God, Shem blessed God, but not after blessing Abraham. See, this is where the problem was. And that's what lost him the priesthood, or rather, now it was time anyway to transfer it to Abraham, because Abraham just passed another trial. Now Abraham becomes the Kohen Lemelech Elyon. Now he becomes and attains the title of Melchizedek. It was all transferred to Abraham right then and there. So we can see this in the Torah. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought out bread and wine, and he was a priest to the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram to the Most High God who possessed heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God who has delivered your adversaries into your hand," and he gave him a tithe from all. The higher the person spiritually, the more severe the judgment, because it's power that they possess, right? It's the power that they possess. And with great power, Peter, comes great responsibility. Okay, Michael and Gabriel made that same mistake, and we've learned this in Genesis 19:13, where they said to Lot, "For we are destroying this place because their cry has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." I'm sorry, you're destroying it, or God is destroying it? That's why he sent us to go do his job, right? Or to go do this job. You understand? Because of that, they got grounded. And only once Jacob had his dream did he see angels ascending and descending. The angels that were ascending were Michael and Gabriel. Okay, so none of these things obviously were said or done with ill intent. God forbid that we should say anything negative about the archangels or about Shem, son of Noah. I'm not going there, not at all. These happen so we can learn from it, okay? You always recognize God first. Baruch Hashem. The first word should come out of your mouth when someone says anything good. Baruch Hashem. And even when it's bad news, someone passes away. Baruch Dayan Emet. You always bless God because God is doing this and God is doing that. Blessed God that he got you out of all these things, and blessed Abraham who merited for God to favor you like that. That would be the correct way. God is destroying this place, so he sent us to do this. That's also the correct way to do it. But these examples, like we said, are to show us that there are no favorites when it comes. There are no favorites here when it comes to God's perfect justice, or as the title of the priest states, "My king is righteousness," Melchizedek, and so exactly he judged perfectly. But Abraham, he doesn't play like that, right? God chose Abraham because Abraham chose God, period. Abraham made God first in his life in every way, in all things. And as we are learning, he has been put to the test time and time again to prove to the world and to the heavenly hosts who he is and the character that he possesses. God wanted to prove to them. Abraham had nothing to prove to anyone, right? Abraham went into the fire when he was the only one in the world before God ever spoke to him. Who does he have to prove what to? Nobody. God knows. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the souls, ten et nefesh," not the souls, it's the nefesh, meaning give me all the manservants and maidservants, and the possessions take for yourself. We don't want any of it, because as it is, we got gold growing up from the ground, coming up from the ground. So what difference does it make? Look what our boy does here. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I raise my hand to the Lord, the Most High God, who possesses heaven and earth. Amen. Neither from a thread to a shoe strap, nor will I take from whatever is yours, that you should not say, I have made Abram wealthy. This guy, amazing. Not a shoelace. Why? All glory goes to God, not to the king of Sodom and Gomorrah, not to Abraham. God and God alone, not a shoelace. Let that sink in just for a moment. Whoa. Okay. At that moment, Abraham was the single most powerful man alive who possessed all the wealth of Sodom and Gomorrah. And we learned just how wealthy they were a few classes ago, not to mention all his wealth that he already had. Abraham was the dude. He had it all right there. Right there. And so the man, the legend, the hero, the slayer of kings, the breaker of chains, hailed by all, stops them in their tracks, stands up and says before them, Sovereign of all the worlds, not by the power of my hand have I done all these things, but by the power of your right hand, with which you shield me in this world and in the world to come. As it is said in Psalms 3:4, but you, O Lord, are a shield to me, my glory, and he who raises up my hand. Ata Adonai magen ba'adi, kevodi umerim roshi. But you, O Lord, are a shield to me, v'ata Adonai magen ba'adi, in this world, my glory, and he who raises up my head in the world to come. Abraham is the first one we see in the Torah who actually prayed. And that is why the first blessing in the Amidah prayer goes to Abraham. And after he prayed to God and gave him all the honor, down to every last shoelace, and all the glory, and all the respect, not keeping a metaphorical shoelace to his own credit, when all the heavenly hosts answered and said, Blessed are you, O Lord, the shield of Abraham. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham. Boom. And that's our class. Hope you enjoyed it. Stick around for next week. We will discuss the 7th trial of Abraham. As always, thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and Shabbat Shalom.